All right, today I wanted to talk a little bit about Tank Seara and how she can be effectively used as a tank in RTA. So we're going to watch this fight here. And it's one of those things that Seara is one of those monsters where they're almost never going to let her through. It almost always gets banned. But when she does get through, your opponent's intention is almost always to nuke her down as soon as possible. Um, so you might want to build her as a tank, or at least as much of a tank as you feel comfortable with, because she's going to be attracting lots and lots of hits. And the whole purpose of a tank is to give the rest of your team enough time to get something done while they're sitting there taking the hits. And if your Seara is not tanky enough, they're going to kill her quickly, move on to the next target, and just slowly kill your team one at a time. So I've built her. This is the tankiest I've ever built her, with damage being completely a secondary concern. She's got a ton of defense, a ton of HP, and a ton of speed. And that's been pretty effective for me in RTA. I built her Will because I don't want her to get completely blown up on the first turn. But, there's a lot of good builds for her. Revenge, Nemesis, but I think Will is probably the strongest. And in almost all circumstances, you want Violent. So here's the spot where she gets punched by the Bulldozer, the double punch, both ignoring defense, and yet she survives. And right after, she blows up and kind of swings the turn of the battle here. They clearly brought that Bulldozer to one-shot that Seara, and it didn't quite work because she was so tanky. Her damage is not the main factor. It's more her surviving and taking those hits so that the rest of the team doesn't have to. I found that Seara is my tank. Like, it's not really a choice I have. It's whatever the enemy decides to attack, that's your tank. And so if you realize who your tanks are, you might as well build them like tanks because they're going to be tanking whether they're built that way or not. It seems to me that units that are going to get hit early on, you want to focus more on HP and less on defense, though technically the HP defense build is the strongest for most units. But if early fight they're going to try to get killed right away, you want to build them with a little bit more HP. So let me show you my Seara. So she's at 29,000 HP and 1,400 defense to go along with 250 speed. So she's pretty fast. On the accuracy, she's not where I'd like her to be. She's going to miss a few bombs with that little amount of accuracy. The resist is pretty good for a damage type unit. She's on Violent Will. Here's her runes. Slot 2 is super tanky Will rune. That could use a grind. And there's the slot 6. So 1, 3, and 5 all maxed. Well, I'm sorry. That one's almost maxed. I need to finish that up. But just super, super tanky. Not a lot of attack. Now, conversely, my Praha is not as tanky as she could be because she's just not a tank in RTA. No one wants to nuke her down because they're worried about her being Nemesis, or they're worried about, not doing enough damage to her and she'll just heal right back up. So I was able to put her on crit rate on slot 3. I'm sorry, on slot 4. Here are her runes. Could do a little bit better maxing out those runes. But she's high crit, so she's going to be turning over those turns pretty frequently. And she doesn't have to tank as much. She's not the one attracting the damage. So I can use that knowledge and adapt her to an even more effective build for my team. So I think knowing who your tanks are, who is going to end up tanking those hits, and building them accordingly is a really strong strategy for approaching how you build your units in RTA. So Tank Seara, that was just one fight. I don't get to use her as much as I'd like, but when I do, I find her tankiness comes into play a lot more than her ability to deal damage. So consider building a Tank Seara. Hope that was helpful, and I will catch y'all next time. Take care, everybody.